truthfully, that I've seen lots of great stories die because we can't get the other side or can't get the other voices in our station, just because that's our job, is to tip. If we're going to tell a story, you got to tell both sides. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's had a question for a while. Do you want to weigh in? On
Yeah.
this? And then
Well, I was going to weigh in
on.
on the social media thing. I jumped into social media space about 4 or 5 years ago, and the reason being is that this community changed. You don't realize that Facebook overnight in Winston-Salem happened just like that. I mean, and I sat there, and before I kind of dived my resources in it, I sat and watched it for about 6 or 8 months, and then realized that I think this may be here to stay. Social media, I break news through social media. I have a Smitty's Notes group fan page, which I, basically use as an events feed, but also break news. Also, I am on LinkedIn, and I use that for the business community. And I'm on Twitter, and everything. Social media is a big part of Smitty's Notes. And one thing I want to tell you guys, because you use Facebook, pretty regularly as a young person, but don't put everything on Facebook for the sole reason that really that's where I get a lot of information from. And you kind of learn that some people say some things that they really shouldn't, as far as news being broken and everything. And I use that as basically a follow-up to another person to find out exactly what's really going on and stuff. So be careful what you put on Facebook.
I have a question for Paul Garber. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of being a freelance journalist?
The advantages are that you can you have freedom to pursue whatever you want. I do a parenting blog, which I've kind of put in hiatus for a little bit, but I'm an older dad, and so I write about what it's like to be an older father. And you can pursue things on your own that might get shot down if you're at a newspaper. You get to experience different editors, so there's more people to learn from and more skills that you can develop. But I'll be honest with you, it's a difficult ride, especially if you're not someone who's got a track record of having produced stories before. Then it's going to be hard to get consistent work that'll constantly pay the bills. And that's the biggest drawback of it. I mean, if you were getting a paycheck like you'd get at a media outlet, without always having to find a market to put your stuff in, it'd be great. But you only get paid when you produce, and so there are going to be times when you might be struggling to produce, and that paycheck's just not coming in, and that can be really difficult. It's exciting in a lot of ways. It's great to work with a great number of people, but another downside, which what Jeff and I were talking about earlier when we got here, is that a newsroom, and I don't know how we want to describe it here. It is like a combination of a fraternity or sorority house and a circus. I mean, it is.
That's pretty good.
It's never ending. There's always something happening. People are always running around, and there's a great team spirit at the same time. You meet the greatest characters you'll ever meet. And so when you're freelancing, I work at home for the most part now, and I really do miss that newsroom atmosphere. I miss coming in and wondering what my friends are going to be working on, and seeing that kind of energy and atmosphere that the newsroom brings, because it really is unlike any other place that I've been in. Like I said, I haven't been in journalism my whole life, but the newsroom is really a special place.
This question is for Chad and David. You talked earlier about the personal attributes somebody needs who's trying to make it in broadcasting or journalism. What are some of the technology skill sets you look for?
You have to be able to do everything. In television, you have to be able to, if you want to get a job in TV news, you have to be able to be not only a reporter, but a producer and a photographer and a good writer. Because today, when I first started, they would have a photographer, they would have a producer, and I would be the reporter. But today, we call them multimedia journalists or backpack journalists, or one-man bands is what sometimes they're called. you do everything. So if you really want to get into my profession, you've got to be able to do it all and show potential boss that you can do it all. And that's how you get your foot in the door. Larger markets still have the traditional photographers. At our station, we still have photographers who work with reporters, and we put the stories together. But we are slowly seeing one-man band reporters, where the reporter also shoots and edits and puts it all together, creeping into our newsroom. Other stations have already started that in this market. It's the bottom of it's part of the business in the smaller markets, the markets you would start in. It's just part of today. They can get 3 people's jobs out of 1, and they're doing it on a faster pace. So you got to make yourself marketable, and by doing that, be able to do everything.
With regard to skill sets for radio journalism, I would say writing, and writing for starters. That's we don't have the advantage of the visual image to tell a good part of the story. And those who have come into our station with an internship background or part-time who write well are typically considered for full-time work. It's just a real plus. It makes a difference between a story that's okay and a really compelling story that grips you and makes you want to listen to it. The other time-consuming aspect of what we do, just to give you an inkling, to put a headline on a story for our website, we might consult with 4 or 5 individuals at the station, bounce them off, and go through 15 or 20 headlines before we post the one we have there. So a lot of consideration put into the words we use, and sound editing is another big time consideration at the station. We need people that are familiar with either Adobe Audition, Pro Tools, any number of sound editing software, that people that are proficient with that can hit the ground running. And we're always meeting deadlines, and when that story has to post at 5:29, it doesn't matter if you just got news of that 45 minutes ago and did your interview over the phone then. It's got to be ready to air then. And sound editing and finding that bite and placing it so that it sounds good on the radio it's a skill, and we do train so you can develop it, but that's something that's crucial. So sound editing, obviously writing, and then the ability to elicit the responses that we need to fulfill the story we're trying to tell quickly. And that often entails, in the course of a phone interview, for example, or a face-to-face interview, jotting down the time codes as you're talking to someone, being aware of, that's a bite I need at 1 minute and 57 seconds, and having the wherewithal to write that down so that you're not having to go through the 20-minute interview with 5 minutes left before we post the story. So those are some of the skills that we're looking for in people we work with at the radio station.
You know, one thing that Chad brought up that was talked about really 4 years ago, I remember having a conversation with Jerry Rowe, who was my editor at Try It Style / Go Try It and everything, and we were saying that, Mojos are probably going to be the wave of the future. Mojo is a mobile journalist, and these are people who have a digital camera, pretty much a laptop, and sometimes a video camera. And they can basically go out and cover a story, and they can get put up on the web just like that. I think it drives editors crazy because they don't have any control over what goes up on the web. But pretty much we're seeing that today.
I have a question for everyone. What was the most challenging obstacles that you had to overcome to get where you are today? And are you currently happy with your current situation?
Speaking for myself, I think I'm the least probably trained and qualified of all these folks up here, but it was just adapting to learning everything. I mean, I just had to have an open mind and be flexible and hard work. And a lot of the things we're saying are things that are true. I don't care what career you choose, or just even in your personal thing in life, just being flexible, hard work, having a passion for what you do.
Right, for me, it was personal sacrifices. I grew up very close to my family, being very family-oriented, and this is a career that's not very family-friendly sometimes, because you're working Christmas, you're working Thanksgiving, you're working those things. So for me personally, that was a huge step for me to be able to break away and find balance. I I haven't gotten rid of my family, but though sometimes at the holidays it's kind of as a blessing. I'm kidding. But you've got to find balance. You've got to find balance because, like Paul said, it's really a 24-hour job. I mean, I'm off on the weekends, but if I see something happening, I'm taking pictures with my phone. I'm sending it to the newsroom, and my wife waving the jugs like he's always working, always working. But and you really are. So that was the tough one for me. That and the financial part. When you first start out, you will not make any money. You won't. You learn very quickly how good bologna and cheese, and then you change up the cheese a little. That can go a very long way. So, you get through those first couple of years of not making any money and barely making ends meet and not having a life because you can't afford one. Those are the sacrifices you make, and working the holidays to finally get to where you get a comfortable salary and, be able to enjoy life and enjoy your job. And so that was the toughest for me.
He's right. Balance is the key because on top of having a full-time job, I'm a litigation paralegal for a corporation. I do some of these notes also. Also have served on numerous boards during that time period. And I don't get home till 9, 10 o'clock at night. That's when the second phase of my day starts. So lucky me, I'm pretty much nocturnal and can stay up late. However, there's got to be some type of balance. And what you do is you basically put yourself on a schedule. And, pretty much Tuesday through Thursday is the only time I will meet with people. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is my time.
For me, it was shyness. I'm naturally very shy. And I had to overcome that to do the job. And, to this day, the man on the street interview is something I absolutely dread. But most of the people I talk to are people who have dealt with the media before and know how to deal with this.
Paul,
But
you have not been shy.
Sing us a song.
We've known each other for 20-some years. So.
I think the biggest challenge for me personally was I do a show that airs every morning at 8:35. I've probably interviewed 3,000 people in the last 5 years to do this art show. Finding a way to organize my schedule so that I'm not overwhelmed was a real challenge early on. Setting up interviews, following up, conducting the interview, editing the interview, posting it online, etc., and learning how to delegate in a way that helped me, help my family, and get that work balance was something that was really daunting at first. But now I've got that balance, and I love what I do, and it is a crazy way to make a living, to talk to artists every day and find out about what they do and they're passionate about. But I love it, and it's a good job.
there's a question back here.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, particularly Mr. Garber and Mr. Tucker, how has the amateur media, the blogs and whatnot, affected gatekeeping in the professional media, deciding what gets published, what gets produced?
It has changed everything. First of all, let's talk about that phrase, amateur media. I certainly respect anyone who has a story to tell and how they get out. That's great. I read a lot of blogs, et cetera, by non-writers, by people who have never been in the media before, and this is what they're doing, and I've learned a lot from them. Sometimes their style of writing is so different from what we do because we've been trained a certain way that you can really learn a lot from it. I certainly have a lot of respect for a lot of writers out there that didn't come up the way any of us did. Now let's go on to the second part of that, which is the gatekeeping role. Basically, if you want to look at it in a positive way, the gatekeeping role is open to a lot more people than it used to be. Our day used to start with talking to the mayor's office, talking to, the media person at the police department, and those kind of things. Now we never know. Someone will come up to us and say, did you see this on Facebook? We ran a story on the Journal 2 years ago that was based on a fight that happened over at East Forsyth that somebody had videotaped and posted, and that became a huge story. And so we never, ever would have covered that if the video hadn't existed and we had been able to get to it. And so, yes, it's been flung open. There are good things about that, and there are downsides as well. But let's just, if you want to look at it democratically, everyone's a gatekeeper now, or there are no gatekeepers.
And bouncing off that, I mean, I know in the mornings they'll look and see what's trending locally. And if that's what people's talking about, we'll try to find a story that coincides with that. Because if that's what people's talking about, then that's what they want to hear. And so we have to adapt to what people are talking about. And we go to those different sources and social media and things like that. And it's true. I can't tell you how many stories that we've done because someone posted this on YouTube and someone posted this and someone said that on social media. And if it wasn't on there, it would not have been a story. And it also, it just opens up so many more doors for people to get their stories out there. It used to be, if people really had a strong story, they would, call us up and knock down our doors until someone told it. Well, now they don't have to do that. They can go online, they can post it, they can tell their own story. They technically don't need us now because if it's a really good story and it ends up becoming viral, they didn't need us to begin with. So.
This question is for all of you. I've heard that some journalists receive their praise or kudos, I should say, from protecting a secret source for law enforcement or for safety purposes. So have any of you had to protect or reveal a secret source because of safety or law enforcement purposes?
I never had to reveal a source. I protect a lot of. I've got a lot of sources, and I don't tell who they are. And you build a close relationship with these people because if they tell you something, after a while you realize it's probably true. It's legit, and so you go on that. But I've never had to reveal a source. It's never come.
I've never had anyone force me to try and force me to reveal a source. No. I mean, yes, it does happen that sometimes folks will talk to you that have a legitimate reason for not having their name in the paper or whatever medium you're using. In the Journal, there's a very strict anonymity policy to where it's to be avoided except to the point where a story that's in the public, essentially a public service story, would otherwise not be able to get out without that person's voice in it, but protected. That happens, I don't want to say often, but it happens enough to that sometimes we don't reveal our sources because the information's so important that we have to get it out, but they have a legitimate reason for their own safety, perhaps, to not say where we got that information from, and there's no other source that we can get it from. Yes, that does happen. To say that, I think you're saying your first part of your question was, that we receive something to protect somebody. I mean, the only thing we get out of it is to be able to get a story out of it that otherwise we couldn't, and we feel that that's an important story. We certainly don't get any tangible benefit from not revealing, and we've certainly never killed a story because someone would say, I'll give you something else down the road. That just doesn't happen. I've had offers certainly, but that just doesn't happen. You've been waiting for a little bit to get your question.
Kind of a question that kind of mixed with this gentleman in the back. I'm sure you have people walk up to you and say, I have a story, and it's the most important story, the most interesting story, and you've probably heard the same thing from many other people. So how do you determine what you will do your story on? And like, what is your most turned down? Like, is there anything that you just kind of don't do a story about if you hear about it too much?
Kind of no, it's kind of a every story is looked at differently. It may be a story that we've told many times before, but if there's a new element of it or in it or some kind of outcome that's been different, we'll tell it. And it also has to do, you know, a lot of people do come up to me and say, I've got a story you need to do. I got, here's a story. You need to tell this one. And I write them down. I write their number down, because it may not be something I can get to right now, but in the future, it could still be, come to fruition. But it really goes according to what the news of the day is for us. I mean, if there's something else going on, there's no way that story's going to be told that day. But if it's a slow news day and it's a good story, we call them evergreen stories. I pull out that list. And so, yeah, I never turn anybody away. I write down the information. I never promise a story. Never promise we'll be there. Never promise we can cover something. But everybody does have a story. They really do. And yes, it may be a story we've heard of over and over again. But when I hear those kinds of stories, I always look for what's different. Or also, what could someone else learn from it? What could people benefit from you telling that story? And so that's how we decide if we end up doing that story or not.
One of the biggest things that, we all kind of like have ceded to ourselves years ago was anonymity. Being anonymous in a crowd. But pretty much, if you really want to get back to what a story is and why it is, you have to be visible. You have to go out to the community and but pretty much let people know that you are accessible to them, and they're approachable, because they'll come to you and stuff. And I've got some of my greatest tidbits as far as things I want to put in the newsletter on the website, just by people just walking up and just saying something to me, and I appreciate that.
I give out my personal cell phone number. I do, because people have a story, and sometimes they just want to call and tell me, but they don't tell me who they are. So I give that out all the time. No one's ever abused it. So.
This question is for all of you. Do any of you happen to have any internships?
WFTD has internships available, and we can chat afterwards if you'd like. We're always looking for to extend our reach into the community. We cover 32 counties. There are 5 of us, 6 with Paul and the news team, and we can chat about that. Yeah.
We do too. Yeah.
The Journal does as well.
We-
The one thing I'll say about internships is, if you're serious about pursuing them, you need to get somebody at the school behind you, because the journalism schools will really push. They know where the internships are, and they'll push their students. And you need someone behind you to say, there you go, that's right. But that have someone working with the people who place internships, so that they can recommend you, and there's someone that they will trust and know to say, yes, he's a good candidate, and that's going to help you a lot. Other than just, if you just put your resume out there, then they're going to be listening to people whose job it is to place people, and then you're going to come along and just be by yourself, and they won't know you. So my suggestion to you is, if you really want an internship, find out one that's really good down your alley, what you're looking for, and then get somebody at the school involved to try and help you get that, and work hard at it. And that's going to set you apart from just a piece of paper landing on somebody's desk who doesn't know you.
We don't typically have internships as much, but we do have a submission policy. So anyone that would like to, my email's in the front of the magazine, and if you have an idea for a story, it's probably best to maybe ask before you spend the time writing it, or perhaps you just have a creative piece that you've written and you'd like to share with us. But we always give people the opportunity and look for those kind of things. So.
I'll also tell you that if you, whatever you want to go into, if you want to go into TV news, try and do an internship in a small market TV station, because those are the internships that will turn to jobs. If you take a job, if you get an internship at Fox 8 or WXI or WFMY in this market, very highly unlikely that they're going to hire you after that internship. But if you go work in a small market station, Eastern North Carolina, Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, those small TV markets, those turn to jobs. And I can't tell you how many people who have went there, did an internship, learned everything they could, and those turned to jobs for them. So I would suggest that when it comes to TV news, if that's what you're interested in.
And you'll be doing real work too. I mean, I think, you know,
Yeah.
because it's easy to get an internship and be competing against professional journalists who are trying to get their stories published, and you're way down on the totem pole, and you might get 3 or 4 clips out of it if you're in the newspaper business, for example. Whereas if you go and work at a smaller paper like in Wilson or wherever, they're going to count on you to produce constantly. That's how you're going to learn, and that's how you're going to develop a portfolio that you can provide to a potential employer.
I hope you guys have enjoyed the session. Certainly thanks and a round of applause for our 5 panelists. And thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedules, and thank you for sharing your knowledge. We really do appreciate it. If you have any last questions for them, feel free to catch them as they're gathering up. Thank you to Robin Braley. She provided pens. Many of you have those. And she also has a couple copies of her magazine on the table if you'd like to take one as you exit. And also, as you exit, please leave the evaluation sheet that you received as you walked in so that we can collect those. And please keep us on your calendars in the future as we have more humanities enrichment series. We'd love to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.